on this computer. Sounds good. I think we're good to go. I don't have any more people requesting the link on my email, so let's get started, Nick.
Just give me a second. I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Nice to see familiar faces, names anyway. And Carmen. There we go. Oh, it's super blurry. Weird.
What about Al?
Better.
Okay. So James isn't here today. I'm going to try and cover the early part of this update. It's really more of a review than an update because we've had a few questions regarding if there is actual changes to the current restrictions because we've gone back a step. So I'll try to cover that. Beth will do a general association update, and then Cartman has a presentation on the coaching pathway. There will also be time for questions. All right, so overview, that's COVID update, but it's really COVID review. Association update, as we talked about, reminder about the AGM and coaching pathway. So the review of the current guidelines, even though we're in step one, training is essentially still the same. We're allowed youth in an indoor environment. Universities are allowed per their own restrictions in the use of university environments. And outdoors, we're still in a group of 10, okay? So there really hasn't been a change to that. The big thing I want to stress today is the fact that, as Beth put at the top, cohorts are not required. So an athlete, what that means is an athlete can be in track one day and let's just say volleyball later in the week. There's no restrictions on it being the same 10 every single time. That's, excuse me, different than it was in the spring. And that's kind of been the clarification point that we've been struggling with. So if we're training outside and we're obeying social distancing guidelines, then we can operate still outdoors, and we still fall under the outdoor sport and recreation model in that regard. Indoors, like I said, youth groups and university, unless we're talking about a specific facility, which typically have been indoor facilities to this point that have a certain exemption. And that, like an example of that would be the NCI in Calgary, or CSI, I believe it is now. So outdoors, up to 10 people, mandatory, 2 meters apart, mask and distance, okay? So I just want to explain a little bit too about exemptions. So we're at a point in time where I don't think exemptions will necessarily happen, but usually that exchange takes a few weeks. So if someone comes to us and says, we need this type of exemption for these individuals for this facility, I can submit the request to HS, and then there's a back and forth between me and their team of people. And that process can take a few weeks. So there's no getting around the restrictions, if that makes sense. So far, the exceptions are limited to indoor facilities, and it's generally been a list of people as it is at CSI. It's a little more open in other facilities, such as the Expo Center up north. Yeah, clubs cannot directly solicit HS. Typically, you're dealing with whatever facility booking group, and then if you get stuck, you come to us. We can go to HS if it's a realistic request, if that makes sense. Rule of 2, no spectators allowed indoors. The rule of 2 example, which is available on coach.ca, it's really to avoid being alone one-on-one with an athlete. We write it's okay to have a track monitor because typically speaking in our spaces, we have a person that accesses the building and lets people in. So in the Expo Center, for example, we have a track monitor that is on call during that time and floating throughout the space. The big thing is to avoid clusters of people. So they're not right on top of people who are training, but they're in the space and are in line of sight. Equipment, typically we don't share this, but it can be shared because I know some people deal with limited equipment. And like if you only have 2 discuses and you have 8 athletes, for example, there's a lot of swapping. You need to sanitize hands before and after, okay? If you can sanitize the equipment, that is helpful as well. But typically distancing is important and then sanitation is important. Beth, I think you wanted to say something?
No, we've got a question in the chat, but we can finish.
Okay.
So we...
Yeah, we'll finish and then we'll get to that question. Oh, well, questions, there you go. So before the association update, I'll take a look at the chat. Okay.
Question from Sean Freeman, multiple clubs using outdoor track at the same time.
Okay, so multiple groups of 10 can exist within the same space. It doesn't matter that they're the same club. We're just looking for that the groups aren't intermingling. We're adhering to distancing requirements throughout the space. And the big thing people need to realize, well, there's 2. 1, yes, the space is big, but 2, how does movement affect that? So really we're asking you to use common sense. But to answer your question, Sean, yes, 2 groups can be in the same space if it is large enough to meet distancing requirements.
And I will caveat that by saying there's like steps to this, right? So we can say, yes, multiple clubs can use an outdoor track at the same time, but if the facility says no, then the facility pulls rank in that respect, right? So it's possible, but it has to be in the context of what the facility can handle. Oh, look, Robin just typed that into the chat.
Yeah. And then I also think there was another question that came directly to me. The question was, what about coaches that work with multiple clubs or multiple communities? If someone is in a city and they're, let's say, working with multiple clubs, because there is no cohort, there's no restriction on a coach moving between. So when there was cohorts, a coach could move between, but even without cohorts, we're trying to create greater flexibility, or at least that's the intention of the government.
Yeah, so to be really clear, the cohorting stopped just after Christmas when we went into this whole distanced thing and wearing masks all the time and approaching the sport in a distanced way. So if ever you are in doubt, every time there's something significant, it's on our website in our news feed. And so all of that information can be found there on an ongoing basis. It's in the blog sort of news feed, as well as on the COVID page. If you have questions about how would you sanitize your equipment, or how to, you know, what that would look like, that's all in those guidelines. Also, all of this said, you still need to be doing your daily check-ins, so you know who's there at your practices. And so if you need that form, if you need that link, I know some people are using their own Google form, which they took our questions and put it on their phone, and it was easier for them. And that's okay, as long as we have that kind of, you know, kind of administration in place, that if God forbid something would happen, then we know who was there at the time. So any other questions on the COVID stuff? I know I've spoken to some of you via email and on the phone, so come on, don't be shy. You can DM us personally here if need be, but happy to answer anything.
Yeah, I'm paying attention to the chat, and if you want to just message me directly, I can deal with stuff at the end as well. In the meantime, let's let Beth move on to the association update, and if there are any questions, I can come back to them at the end.
So do you want to, I hope I can record this. Can you share the screen for the slides? Yes, Nick?
Yeah, the same slide, sure.
Yeah, if you can do that, then I can.
Do you see that?
I do. It says question. Next slide, please. Great. So the outdoor season, I think, Nick, you can help me with this if need be, but there are some events going ahead. Certainly CalTAF is putting some events out there. They aren't going to look the same, as we've said before. They're going to be managed and what do we call that person? The event director, meet director is going to have a lot of different responsibilities in terms of making sure that COVID restrictions are met and things are spaced in certain ways, whether it be in timing or literally spaced. So if you're curious, if you're interested, you know, Nick is the guy to contact about how you can pull off an event this season in the outdoor season. Our annual
I'll just jump in on that quickly. But yes, you're right. Limited events are happening. Pole vault is an example up in the north, and throws is an example out in the south. It's typically, under the current restrictions, way easier to host field events. To a more difficult degree, you could host laned events, which obviously presents issues for the distance events. Okay, go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, we'll get to your question in a second. I just see Tim, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so also coming up, the annual general meeting, we're doing it again online, Saturday, May 1st. You need to sign up for it. So I'll put in the chat, maybe when Nick is answering questions, or maybe Nick can put in the chat the AGM link so that you can sign up. There's a good number of board seats available for nominations right now. Again, the importance of making sure you attend. You know, you're members of this association. It is a member-driven organization, and you know, it's your right. You need to be there. You need to see what's going on, how the money's being spent, and have an understanding of who's going to be representing you in the board level, making those kinds of decisions on behalf of the organization. So I encourage you to attend. It will not be riveting, but it's important nonetheless. Next slide, please, Nick. Oh, great. There was a questions. So Tim had a question. Oh, thanks, Robin. What about Canada Summer Game trials? That's a you, Nick. That's a Nick question.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So Tim, Canada Summer Games has actually been moved to next summer, so that won't take place until next year. So when we do the Calendar Congress in the fall, that will be awarded at a later date. So there's no Canada Summer Games in 2021, hence there's no trials in 2021.
And Laura wants to know if there are going to be opportunities for multi-events like pentathlon or heptathlon. That'd be tricky, I think. Hey, Nick? We just need your microphone on.
Hey. So yes, it would be tricky. I know there is a couple opportunities out east. Obviously that doesn't do any thing for the younger athletes out this way. I don't know where things are at with provincials. I know that was their original intention to host a combined events opportunity. And I haven't touched base with CalTAF regarding this sheet of meat, so I don't know what's going to be offered to the youth. But highly unlikely in May that anything is going to happen combined events related.
And Ron has a question about restrictions on athletes going to compete in the HP meets from province to province.
Okay, I think we're on to Carmen.
There's just one more question, Nick, about restrictions on athletes going to compete from province to province.
Ron is just adding to the chat. It really depends on, in terms of Toronto, Burnaby, Calgary. So for example, I assume you're talking about the tiered meets for older athletes in terms of getting points. Like Harry Jerome, Caltaf is one, and there's a high performance meet in Toronto, I believe. So it really depends on the province. I have heard that there may be an issue or restriction going to Jerome, but that's based strictly on where things are at in BC. There may be issues on additionally in going to Ontario based on their provincial restrictions. So it's kind of a half answer. The answer is probably, but it's relative to each location.
Okay, ASAA are working with AC to put together a virtual track and field challenge. More information to come. Hey, cool, thanks, Tim. Okay, I think if there are no other questions, we'll move on to Carmen James.
Can't hear you.
What do you mean you can't hear me? I'm not on mute. Oh, Carmen needs to come off mute. Carmen is going to start sharing her screen here shortly. There was some, and you can speak to this, Carmen, some misunderstandings or misinterpretations about old pathways and new pathways, and so Carmen's going to explain the coaching pathways in right now. Here we go.
Okay, how do I've got this thing on the top.
Go up and hit enable editing.
Oh, there, hang on, I had a thing in the way.
I think you need to go see where the bar says enable edit. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, no, I had the bar was on the top and blocking my view. All right, there we go. All right, hi everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. Today's presentation is called Coaching Pathways of the NCCP in Athletics. Now, the purpose of this presentation is to clarify how the National Coaching Certification Program works in our sport, and the goal is to get everybody on the right track. So, but before I proceed and talk about what it's like now, I need to give a little bit of history. So we're going to backtrack here and talk about the old program. All right. Oops. Okay, I can't switch slides. What's the deal here? Ah, there we go. All right. So now back in the day, the NCCP consisted of levels. All right, you can see those there on the left side of the screen, which all coaches were required to ascend. It was a lot like climbing up a flight of steps. Each level was connected to each other, and coaches all followed the exact same pathway, regardless of who they were coaching. For example, a coach working with a junior development group whose focus was on teaching basic skills of all track and field events, that coach would go boom, 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 up these 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. That was their coaching pathway. Another coach working with, say, high school athletes who were focused on a particular, a specific event group, that coach would follow the exact same pathway. Boom, 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 up those 3 steps, and away they went. But even for a coach working with a national team athlete whose focus was on preparation for the Olympics, let's say in high jump, that coach too would follow the exact same coaching education pathway. Boom, 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 up those 3 steps. So basically, it was a one-size-fits-all program, and, well, it was ineffective. So the Coaching Association of Canada decided to come up with a new and improved program, one that provides more appropriate training and certification for the coaches. More specifically, this new program is better designed to meet the specific needs of the athletes being coached by targeting their ages and stages of development. In other words, the new program is much more athlete-centered and coach-driven. Now, there's still coaches that think that the new program is basically the old program, but with fancy new names, such as sport coach, club coach, and performance coach. However, this is incorrect. Firstly, there are no more levels. Okay, poof, the levels are gone. as are the numbers. All right. Instead, the new program consists of 3 separate pathways, which you can see over there on the right. Now, each pathway has a different purpose, and each pathway is unrelated to the other 2. All right. In other words, no pathway is better than one of the others, and all pathways are equally important. The deciding factor is on the athletes that are being coached. Okay. Now, before I move on, I got one more thing that I need to say, and that's in reference to this new program. I keep calling it a new program, but in actuality, it's been around for over 10 years. It's just been misunderstood. So that's why we're back to the purpose of this webinar. Okay, so now you might be thinking, well, what does this new pathway look like? And here in Alberta, this is what I have envisioned the pathways to look like. Ta-da! All right. Now, some of you might be thinking, egads, what is that? It looks like a dancing bird. Or perhaps some of you are thinking, hang on here, what's happened to our levels? I don't see any numbers. On the other hand, some of you might go, oh my goodness, this gal has lost her marbles. That makes no sense whatsoever. Hopefully, there's a few of you that are thinking, well, if that's the new pathway, where does one begin? And that leads me to my next slide. All right, so the key is to put your focus of attention on that black dot in the lower half in the middle of the page. All right, think of that as the hub. And then from there, you can see how there's one pathway that goes down towards the bottom of the screen. We could call that south. There's another pathway that goes to the right of the screen. We could call that east. And well, yeah, then there's another sort of a convoluted pathway with looks like 4 arms and 4 legs, but it's going up to the top of the page, and we could call that north. So from that perspective, if you were standing on that black dot, hopefully you can clearly see that there are 3 different pathways. They're totally unrelated to each other, and they go in different directions. All right, moving on. Okay, so these 3 pathways actually have names. Now, I admit I came up with that fancy diagram. I just dreamt it up one night and I thought, this is a perfect way of clarifying things. But those names I did not come up with. Those are the same 3 names that are used by all 65 national sport organizations in Canada. Okay, we're all under the same program and we all have 3 separate pathways. The only slight difference is that some sports call their pathways streams instead of pathways. I don't really know the reason behind it, but I would guess that perhaps those people come from, say, aquatic sports. Maybe it's the head coach of Canoe Canada that thought streams is more appropriate. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Streams, pathways, whatever they're called, the thing is there are 3 of them, and they are called community sport, instruction, and competition. 3 different programs with 3 different purposes, and one is unrelated to the other. Okay, so now here in athletics, we have 4 different programs. All right, and those would be like the circles. And at the bottom of the page, you can see that if you go down the community sport pathway, you'll come to the run, jump, throw, wheel program. If you take the instruction pathway off to the side of the page, that leads to sport coach. And then if you make your way up to the top of the page, that would be the competition pathway. There are 2 different programs. The first one being club coach and the second one being performance coach. All right, so now what we're going to do is examine each pathway in a little bit more depth right after I have a drink of water. Okay, first pathway, community sport. All right, as I said, that leads to the run, jump, throw, wheel program. And if you're a coach that works with very young athletes, say ones that are being introduced to the sport for the very first time, this is the pathway for you. The focus is on fundamental movements with the emphasis being on FUN, all right, fun. So that's why I put it in capital letters. And it's done in a totally non-competitive environment. All right, so if you're working with young kids, and teaching them the basics, making it a lot of fun, non-competitive, then that's the program for you. However, if you are a coach working with, say, young teenagers, where the focus is to teach the basic skills of all track and field events, then the instructional pathway is the one for you. So just think of it, instruction, skill development, that's the focus, and it's in all track and field events. So it's kind of like, block clearance, acceleration mechanics, running mechanics at top speed, pace judgment for anything like, over 800 meters. On the field events, all right, we're working on run-ups, we're working on takeoffs, we're working on landings, as well as various ways to throw different implements. The only events that aren't included are pole vault and hammer throw at this level, but otherwise it is the skill development of all track and field events for young teenagers. Okay, now the competition pathway, for coaches on that pathway, they're the ones working with athletes who want to specialize in a particular event area. And it's usually in preparation for a provincial or national championship. All right. And as you can see, there are 4 different club pathways in order to get to club coach. All right. So it's not all track and field events. And choose which of these pathways to go through. So as you can see, E, that's like for endurance. T is for throws. J is for jumps. And then we've got sprints and hurdles over here. So a coach would choose which event group to focus on, and that's what club coach is all about. Then once a coach is trained and certified as a club coach, then he or she has 2 options. He could return to club coach and take another pathway. So if a coach is, say, certified in sprints and hurdles, maybe he or she wants to learn more about jumps, because quite often, jumpers are good sprinters and sprinters are good jumpers, especially when it comes to the horizontal jumps. So that, or say a coach who took the endurance pathway, they might want to come back and do it again, but take sprints and hurdles. So they get the full spectrum of running, from the short sprints all the way up to the longer events. Or another example would be a combined events coach. All right, they want to learn a lot about sprints and hurdles, come back, take it again, learn more about jumps, learn more about throws. So they would focus on, these 3, perhaps even take endurance as well, but you can take club coach 4 different times. Now, you don't necessarily have to take all 8 modules again, all right, because each of those has 8 modules. When you're retaking a course, you're just taking modules 6, 7, and 8. Those are the practical sessions. They are the technical sessions. They relate to strength development, but all the previous modules, 1 through 5, would have already been taken. All right. So, and then needless to say too, then the price of taking that club coach a second time is less. It's only like $95 instead of having to pay the full price. Okay, so that's one option. The other option might be, whoops, hang on here. Went too far there. Whoops. Oh, hang on. Yeah, there's where I was. Okay, so perhaps the coach has taken their club coach in endurance, and they're like, okay, I'm not really interested in those other events. I want to take it to, the advanced level. So then they would go up this pathway to performance coach, and then they would take advanced specific event group training. Okay, so although one doesn't have to be a certified coach in run, jump, throw in order to get onto the next pathway. All right, so down here at the bottom, or one doesn't have to be a certified sport coach in order to get over the club coach pathway. All right, though they're totally different and they're unrelated. But if one wants to take the performance coach program, they do have to first become certified as a club coach. All right, in one of those 4 areas. It doesn't have to be all 4, but choose one of them, become certified, either carry on up that path, or like I said, repeat it a few times and learn more about the other events. Okay, so that explains the 3 different pathways and what the focuses are in each of them. All right, this screen just shows, the ages and stages of development of the athletes. Because again, it's all based on who you're coaching, where they're at, what their needs are. Now, these numbers, don't be, too focused on those. They're not etched in stone. It's kind of like a sliding scale. So if one takes the community sport pathway to run, jump, throw, though those athletes are like definitely under 10, but could perhaps be under 12 as well. but the focus is on fundamentals and just learning how to train. Whereas going down the instruction pathway to sport coach, again, those athletes are definitely under 16, but some of them could be under 14 as well. It's a sliding scale, and the focus there is not just on learning to train, but actually training to train. And then for club coach, the focus there is on training to train and training to compete. Again, sliding scale, but definitely under 18, could be under 16. And then moving up to performance coach, it's for those that are training to compete and training to win. And I highly recommend that everybody take the long-term athlete development course. It's a module. It takes like an hour to complete, but you'll learn all kinds of stuff about what's appropriate for the different age groups for athletes when it comes to coaching. And I should say too, performance coach, although it says under 20, it's also for older 20, because the athletes that are being coached at that level, they're the ones that are going to be competitive, like at the national junior championships, as well as the national senior championships, as well as the Canada Games. All right, we're requiring all of our Canada Games coaches to be certified at the performance coach level. And you could think of too, sorry, I forgot to mention this, but athletes in that group, they're sort of the athletes that are getting ready for the National Legion Championships. And sport coach, even though the focus is on skill development, there's a few competitions out there for them, but specifically the Alberta Summer Games. Okay, so hopefully that clarifies the differences between the programs within athletics. All right, next slide just sort of brings everything all together, and you can see the three different pathways, the ages and stages of the athletes, as well as what the training focus is. Now, what I haven't mentioned, and there is one more piece to the puzzle, and up beyond performance coach, there is another level called high performance coach. It's not a workshop that we offer like on a weekend or like on a 4-day schedule, but it's actually a 2-year program where one can earn their advanced coaching diploma, and that's at the National Coaching Institute in Calgary. So that's a possibility too. However, one can't just jump to that and get the training. They have to first be certified as a performance coach. And as I already said, to be in the performance coach program, you need to be certified as a club coach. So in a way, I mean, I hate to use the word levels, but within the coaching, within the competition pathway, there are 3 levels. Club coach are. Okay, so now here's a real fun thing, and it only applies to the coaches here in Alberta. Coaches from other provinces, they just won't get it. So if we turn these coaching pathways into Alberta roadways, look what we get. Ta-da! All right, so based on this slide, you can see that Lethbridge is the hub of Alberta, at least when it comes to coaching education. And if one wants to become certified as a run, jump, throw, wheel instructor, well, they would take Highway 4 South down to Milk River, all right? Or if a coach wants to focus more on becoming a certified sport coach, where they teach the young teenage athletes all track and field events, well, then they would take the Crow's Nest Highway east to Medicine Hat. Now, to get to club coach, or in order to get to Calgary from Lethbridge, there are 4 different pathways. All right, one could take this one here with the E, that's like Highway 36 up through Brooks, get to Highway 1, head west, boom, you're in Calgary. Or if one wants to take Highway 23 up through Vulcan, that's where the Star Trek spaceship is. I keep on, turn left at Highway 1 and boom, you're in Calgary. The jumps, that's like Highway 2, all right? No problem there. Everyone's probably been on that, but that's like the highway that goes through Clare's home. And then the 4th one would be way over here, Highway 22, basically go down to Pincher Creek, turn north, go through Longview, and then you're in Calgary. So for those of you that haven't driven around the province a lot, I highly recommend checking that out. It's right there in the foothills and it's just beautiful. Lots of lakes, lots of trees. All right, so carrying on with our roadways, everyone knows that the roadway between Calgary and Edmonton is the QE2. All right, and yeah, so there we go. If you know your roadways of Alberta, then for sure, this should be crystal clear now as to how the coaching pathways work. All right, so in summary, the Run, Jump, Throw, Wheel program, the Sport Coach program, and the Club Coach program are each on separate pathways, all right? And each pathway has a different purpose, and it's totally based on the age and the developmental stage of the athletes that you coach. So that determines which of those pathways to choose. And that in order to get to performance coach, though, that's the only one where you have to first be certified in a different program. So you have to be a certified club coach before you can move on to being a certified performance coach. All right, so thanks for your attention during this session. I hope it clears up any confusion. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to call me or email me, and I'll be more than happy to get everybody on the right path.
I think we have a couple of minutes. If there's any questions right now, put them in the chat. I think we have a couple of minutes to answer one or two questions. Sean, we know you're going to never forget now. There'll be a quiz later today, Sean. Watch yourself. Any questions from the folks? Oh, here we have one from Ronald. How do coaches obtain their personal observation criteria from their evaluator with these current COVID restrictions? Will the
Great question.
still be allowed? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great question, Ron. And what we've done, in fact, we had 24 coaches complete their training in club coach and sport coach just a little while ago, and we're now getting them on the evaluation part of things. And what we're going to do is have those practices videotaped. All right, and then send the video to the coach evaluator to do the evaluation. But it's important, though, that the video is done correctly, right? So we want the entire practice. We want to be able to see the coach and the athlete. Ideally, it would be good to be within 20 meters of what's going on. But the key is you not only want to see what they're doing, but you want to hear the conversation. So the evaluator would want to know, like, what's being discussed before practice, what's being discussed during practice, and then of course the post brief after practice. Okay, all that has to be included. And but yeah, then the plan will be to send that video to the coach evaluator. The coach evaluator will do the evaluation, and then then move on. But it's important to do the video correctly, otherwise you might have to do a redo. So what I've encouraged the coaches who are already starting this is to double check with their coach evaluator to make sure that what needs to be videoed is included in the recording. And you can't cut and piece it together. It's got to be one whole practice. So no editing. All right.
We have time for one more question before wrap up. It is from Mr. Lamont in Calgary.
Hey, Doug.
He is just confirming that a new coach can start with club coach and move on, or they do not need to start with sport coach.
Exactly. A new coach can go right up that club coach pathway if they're coaching athletes in a specific event group who want to get better in that event group and are getting ready for competition. So yeah, no need to do sport coach, no need to do run, jump, throw. Bang on correct there, Doug.
Okay. If there are no other questions in the chat, we will thank you all for your kind attention. You know all of our emails, you use them well, and we're here to support you any way we can. So be in touch. We'll download this video, put it up on our YouTube channel, and share it up on social media so you can share it up. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you next month.
All right, bye everybody.